Hey everyone, Todd from Sideshow Effects once again, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating the installation and navigation of our new Premiere Pro pack for the Stream Deck Plus device. Now this is version 1.5. We've added a few things in that you're going to want to take advantage of. Now in addition to adding in some updated icons, we also have a full profile set for German keyboard layout users and French keyboard layout users. So those of you who are using a German keyboard layout or a French keyboard layout, you don't need to install and run our pack with an English QWERTY layout anymore. You can load the profiles for your keyboard layout. Now the other big thing that we have in version 1.5 is we have expanded the color profile, allowing you to adjust directly many of the color parameters in the Lumetri color panel. And we'll get into that shortly. Now, as always, it's recommended that you follow along with the PDF guide that's included in the download, as it has the most recent up-to-date information, likely more recent than this video. So we encourage you to follow the steps along the PDF. It is a very detailed PDF. We tried to cover everything as much as possible in a step-by-step format, so that we're not missing anything, and so you're very clear on all the steps that need to be taken. So it's advisable to use this video as an accompaniment to the PDF that's in the pack. Now I'm going to be demonstrating this on the Mac system. Pretty much everything that we're covering here is the same on the Windows system. Where it differs, we'll point it out at that time. So once you download the pack, this is what you're going to see. Now the first thing I want to point out is we have the Stream Deck Profiles folder here, and inside we have three folders, one for the French Azerty keyboard layout, one for the German Quartz keyboard layout, and one for the English QWERTY keyboard layout. Now, of course, in this demonstration, we're going to be demonstrating it using the English layout, but the principles are identical with the French and German. Now, you'll notice if you are a French or German keyboard layout user, when you open these folders, there are PDFs included in here. This is to keep the size of the download, of the initial download pack smaller. Now what these PDFs are, when you open them up, and there's one for a Mac and one for Win, you can see the same thing in the French folder as well. So if you're using a German keyboard layout on a Mac system, you would open up this PDF, and you can see you're presented with this one page, and it has a click here to download the profiles. When you click on this, it'll ask you to open your browser. And once you open the browser, you'll see this download. You'll be able to download your profiles. And once you've downloaded that zip file, you would unzip it. And then inside, you will see your keyboard shortcut file, which we're going to get to in just a second, and all of your profiles that are mapped specifically for a German keyboard layout. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to install our keyboard shortcut files. These shortcut files are required so that the mapping we have done in the profiles match the mappings that we have laid out in Premiere. Now these keyboard shortcut files need to be placed in a very specific place on the Macintosh system. They need to be placed in, and I'll show the file path here, into your hard drive, users, your username, documents. So it's going into your documents folder. In the Adobe folder, navigate to Premiere Pro, the current version of Premiere Pro you're running. In my case, it's 24. And inside of this Mac folder. And that's where you're going to place the shortcut file. You just drag and drop it into this Mac folder. You can see I already have it here. On the Windows system, it's the same thing. It goes into your documents folder. Premiere Pro, your version of Premiere Pro, and in the folder Profile with your username, and in there you'll find a Win file, and that is where you will drag the Windows keyboard shortcut file into that Win folder. Now if you have Premiere Pro running while you did this, you'll need to restart Premiere Pro in order for it to appear. Now let's launch Premiere. We'll need to go into Premiere Pro, keyboard shortcuts, and we're going to load in the keyboard shortcut that you had installed in your documents folder. And if you have restarted Premiere, it'll show up here. You just select the most recent one that you just imported, say OK, and then all the shortcuts will be aligned with what we've got in the profile. Now, next thing we want to do is we've got a plugin that we take advantage of. It's a plugin we've developed. And so with your Stream Deck software open, you're going to double click this file and it will self-install. I already have it installed. And you'll know it's installed when you see it under here under Mouse. That indicates that our plugin is currently loaded. If you have one of our other packs that uses the plugin, you may have an older version. Just make sure you're using the most recent version, which is this one. 132 it ends in. That's the most current version as of this recording. Now the last thing to do in this section is we're going to import the Stream Deck profiles themselves. So you will go to your corresponding folder and whichever operating system you're currently working on. I'm on the Mac, of course. So we're going to open up the Mac folder and you'll see there are 12 different profiles that are here. And we want to import all of these together. If you're on a Mac system, you should be able to click and shift click to select them all and then double click and they should all load up in sequence. And you see we've got it loaded in now. On the Windows system, you will have to load them in one at a time just by double clicking with your Stream Deck software open and they will load in one at a time. Now if you're updating from version 1.0 of this pack, the editing and the color profiles have changed. All the rest have stayed the same. So you will only need to load in these two. But you will need to go into your preferences, into the profiles, and you'll need to delete your existing, yours won't say 1.5, this is indicating that's the new ones. But if you have the original ones of color and editing, delete those first, and then import the editing and the color with the 1.5 attached to it. And that way it won't have a append of copy at the end of the name. And it just keeps things cleaner so you don't have duplicate versions. Also, if you're updating, you're aware of the relinking process, which we're going to get to in a second. So you will need to relink to the new color and the new editing profiles. And we'll get to that in just a second. Now, one other thing that we've added into version 1.5 is we have icon packs. So we always had the icons here that you can use to customize and expand your existing profile. So all the icons are available here. But we've also included icon packs. And what the difference is these are all the labeled and unlabeled icons, but they will now appear inside of your Stream Deck software. So I'll demonstrate how that actually works. So if we go to, let's go to the Align here, where we have a couple of blank keys here. If I'm going to build out my profile, I want a couple of additional keys here. I'll just make a hotkey here, and let's say I want to put my save shortcut here. So Command S, and I can just label this save. But I want the save icon here. So I can go into our icons here and look for it under labeled or unlabeled, whichever one I want, and find the save icon. But this make it a little bit easier. So if I go to I can go to either the unlabeled or this is regular, which is labeled. Let me double click this, and this will load in the icons into my Stream Deck software and tell me that it's loaded in there. So now when I go to this icon here and say open the Stream Deck icon library, it loads my icon library. You see I have several different icon packs here. If I go to the bottom, you can see I've got the Premiere Pro icon pack here. And if I expand this down, you can see I've got all the icons now loaded right into my software. And if I wanted, I can do a search for save. Now this will show save for all of my icon packs that I've got currently loaded. But I can select this one here just by clicking on it, and it automatically loads it straight into my profile. So we have labeled and unlabeled icon packs that are now available in 1.5. Make it a little quicker and easier for you to customize your profiles. Okay, so now we've got all of our profiles installed. Let's go to the main profile here. And you see we've got 8 different keys here. What these are switch profile keys, meaning that when you click on them, they will launch a profile that we designate. So by clicking on Manage, you can see currently it is not set to anything. At this time, Stream Deck does not retain the profile that we have set at factory. So this is something you need to set up yourself very quickly, and I'll show you how to do that. So with Manage selected, we'll click on the profile here, and we'll go down to where we see Manage. And now when I go to my device and I press on Manage, it loads the Manage profile for me. Now you can see we've got a main key here. This is designed to take us back to where we just were, which was the main profile, but it needs to be set as well. So clicking on this, and under Profile, we're going to tell it to go back to main. So when I go to my device again, press main, that takes us back to the main page. Now we're going to do this for the rest of the keys. Very simple process. Click on Editing, Editing, Audio, Audio, Graphics, Markers, Multicam, Keyframe, and Caption. Now let's go into editing by pressing it on our device. And you can see we have a couple others here. These are also switch profiles, trim and color. So we'll do trim first. You go to the trim profile, and color will take us to the color profile. Now we're going to click on main because once again we have to take this back to the main page. Now while we're here, let's get into color. It loads the color profile. Click on main. We're going to send it back to where we just were, which was editing. So now when I click on the device, it takes me exactly to where I was. The same thing with trim. We'll click on trim, and the main will take us back to editing. And then we can, because we set this already, we can go back to main that way. Now we'll go to audio. Same thing. Going back to main. Graphics. Main. Now you see we also have a line here. This is also a switch profile. Click on this. We're going to go to Align. Let's click on Align. This main is going to go back to Graphics and Titles, which sends us back to where we were. In color, we're going to designate this for color, but because we only have one color profile, and we already set that the color profile is going to take us back to editing, that is the only one of these that is different. So clicking main takes us back. We'll go to markers next. Main. Multicam. Main. Keyframe. Main. And caption. Go back to main. So there we have it. Those are all set up and linked to each other. Now you can access all the profiles you've imported as they're all interconnected to each other. Now we're going to go into the new color profile, and we need to do a little bit of setup over there. So let's go to editing, and we'll go into color. So in this section we're going to go over the setup procedure for the new color profile. Color profile will allow you to control many of the parameters within the Lumetri color panel. And the way it does this is it will record the position of the parameters on your screen. And then when you start moving a dial, it will jump to that part of the interface and adjust the value of the parameter. Therefore, in order for these dials to work, you need to have these parameters visible for them to be adjusted. What's also important is that before we record the positions of where these parameters are on our screen, we have to make sure we've got our screen set up in such a way that these parameters will always be on the screen in the position that you recorded them. The best way to do that is to just go to the window workspaces and load the color workspace. which is also Option Shift 7 on the Mac here. And that way, this Lumetri color panel will always appear in this location. Now, if you want, you can move the color panel to another part of your interface, even onto a second monitor. It will still work, but you want to make sure that before you start recording these coordinates, that you're happy with where the Lumetri color panel is and you're not going to move it. If you move it, you'll have to reassign the coordinates again. So on the first page of the color panel here, you can see the keys. Along the top, we've got the Lumetri color panel, the scopes, and a comparison view. Those are just shortcuts that you can press those, and they work as long as you've got our shortcut file loaded. They work fine. Now the second row, we're going to assign the positions of these different items. The first you can see is basic. What that allows us to do is open and close this basic pull down in the Lumetri color panel. So what we want to do is take our cursor, put it over top anywhere on the basic correction heading here, and then we're going to press and hold in that basic key on our device until you see a check mark. You see the check mark. What that has done, that has recorded this position on our screen. Now, because everybody's screen is different, everybody is working at different resolutions, and like I said before, there might be people who have the Lumetri color panel in a different part of the screen. That's why you need to do this for your own unique workstation. So if I move the mouse off and press that on my device, you can see that the cursor jumps to the basic correction menu item, clicks on it, and it therefore opens up for us. Now with that open, the next key is a show key, which is this checkbox right here, and you see as I mouse over it, it lights up a little bit, indicating that it is ready to be clicked. That's the correct position for you to record. Press on show until you see the check mark. Now when we move our mouse off, pressing show will turn it off or turn it on, whichever toggle state you're in. Next key over is auto, so that is of course our auto button here. Press and hold to see the check mark, and then we'll do reset. Press and hold until you see the check mark. Now that row of buttons is done. We're going to start doing the dials now. The dials are done in a similar way. I'm going to move my cursor over top of the intensity parameter, somewhere in the center there, over top of the parameter controller. Now it's grayed out at this time. We can make it active by pressing auto, and that makes it a live function now. And it doesn't matter. You can place it either way, whether it's grayed out or not. We're just recording the position. So with my mouse in that position, we'll go to our device, and we're going to push in and hold dial number 1. And you'll see a location saved appears on the dial strip. That indicates that that position has been saved. Now, if my mouse is somewhere else, I have intensity is active because I'd pressed auto. Now when I go to my device and start rotating that first dial, it will jump to intensity and allow me to record the position. Now if I move my mouse off again, I'm doing work somewhere else, and I want to adjust intensity further. You can see that I jump to it and it picks up where it left off. It didn't jump to the position we initially recorded it at because it is saving the position each time I rotate it. Now what happens if we go to a second image? We can click auto for this one to make intensity an active controller. Now when I adjust the intensity, you can see it jumps over to where I last saved on my previous image. So to prevent this from happening, let's reset this one. I'll press auto again. If we want to start the intensity controller from our recorded position, which if you recall was right in the center here, what we need to do on our device is push in and rotate that dial, and that resets back to your default recorded position. So push in and rotate just very quickly like that, and now when I rotate, it picks up from that center position. and once again saves as we go along. So that's just a way of clearing out that temporary memory. So let's go back to our first image here, and we're going to continue on with the rest of these parameters. Now you see dial number 2 is divided into 3 sections. We have temperature, tint, and saturation that can be adjusted. And we can select which one we want to adjust by clicking on that part of the dial screen. And you'll know which one is active by the green triangle in the top corner there. When you rotate the dial, that is the parameter that will be adjusted. But of course we need to set these up first. So you can see we've got temperatures currently selected. So let's take our cursor, put it over top. Actually, I'm going to reset this first so everything's in the center. We'll go to temperature. We're just going to mouse over the center of that controller point. Press and hold. Location is now saved. Now anytime with temperature selected as it is with the green triangle, it'll allow me to adjust my color temperature. Now to adjust the tint, we'll need to press on that part of the dial screen. So the tint is now active. Move our cursor over top of the tint controller. Press and hold. And we'll do the same thing for saturation. Press and hold. Now I can work between these 3 different controls. Make my adjustments as I need. Third dial is also divided into 3. It's divided into exposure, contrast, and highlights. We'll repeat the procedure. Mouse over exposure. We'll click on exposure. Make sure that that is the active item. Press and hold. Move to contrast. Press and hold. Highlights. Press and hold. Now we can adjust any of these. And we can do the 4th dial, which is the shadows, whites, and blacks. So I'm going to mouse over shadows. Shadows is currently selected with the green triangle. Press and hold. Go to whites. And mouse over blacks. Now we're done with the basic correction page. Now it's good practice if we're moving around between the different sections of the Lumetri color panel from basic correction into creative, into HSL, and into vignette, which is what we have a page each for, to close up the previous panel before you move on to the next one, because we need to have room on our screen for all the controls. If we opened up creative, things will start running off the bottom of the screen, and as indicated before, we need to have everything on the screen at the same time. So the good practice is to close off basic correction. That closes all the panels. Now we're going to, because there's 4 pages in this profile, we're going to advance to page number 2 by swiping left on the dial screen. And you can see we have creative on the bottom row here. We're going to move our mouse over to the creative header, press and hold on creative. So we see the check mark, and then we can just open that up. Let's do show for the creative, which is this one here. And of course, this is a global reset. We'll go down to intensity. Press and hold on dial 1. We'll go to faded film over here on the far left. We're going to click on faded film if it isn't already on yours. Press and hold. Sharpen goes over here. Click on sharpen on your device. Vibrance currently selected. And saturation. Press on saturation, press and hold. and tint balance occupies the fourth dial. So now all of these are available to be controlled. And that's page 2 done. Now we're going to go over to page 3. Before we do that, let's close up Creative. Now we can advance to page 3. We're mouse over HSL secondary. Press and hold HSL, and we can click on it to open up the panel. If you're working on a much lower screen resolution, if you find any of these controls are running off the bottom, you'll need to use your mouse wheel to scroll up, and it's recommended you scroll it as far as you can. Alright, so as before, go over to Show, and let's just do Reset. We'll go here to the Global Reset. Now you see we've got color gray there on the third key. Now that's located under Key here. Now you see when I scroll key down, it pushes my controls down and off my screen so that I can't access the saturation at the bottom. It runs right off the bottom of my screen because my screen resolution is not high enough to accommodate all the controls. Now many of you will have a much larger screen resolution that this isn't an issue. One way around this is every time you go to the HSL secondary, you can just use your scroll wheel to scroll up as far as it'll go to allow them to all be available on screen, and then we can record. But of course, if you do that, you have to remember to do that scroll motion so that positions you recorded will line up. So recommendation is probably, for those of you working on a lower screen resolution like I've got here, is to leave key folded up. That way everything appears. It just means you won't have access to the color gray. The color gray, if you're going to use it, hover your cursor over that location, press and hold, and you can record that. Now of course, if I'm working in this position and I press color gray, it's not going to do anything. It's going to click somewhere in here because it's not on screen. So that's a choice you'll have to make depending on what your screen resolution provides. So to the dials. On the first dial we have denoise and blur. So let's move our cursor over the controller of denoise. Make sure denoise is active, and we're going to push in until we see location saved. Same thing with blur. We're going to make blur active. Press and hold. Now we'll go down to temperature. Tint. Contrast. Sharpen. And saturation. Now we should be able to control any of these parameters. Now let's close up the HSL. We'll go to the fourth page, which allows us to work with the vignette. Take our cursor over vignette, and we can open it up. Mouse over show. And over the reset. And then mouse over amount, and since we only have 4 controllers here, each one is dedicated to each of the 4 dials. So amount, midpoint, roundness, and feather. Now those controls are all set. In fact, that's everything all set up for the color profile. You just have to remember to open up whichever menu that you want to open to control, But once you get into a rhythm, it actually becomes quite second nature. So if there's anything you're a little unsure about, please look at the color section in the manual. It gives very detailed directions as to where each item is and how you perform the function. And that's it. You've now successfully relinked everything to each other. You're all good to go. You're ready to use the Stream Deck Plus device for your editing now. I encourage you to take a look at our navigation video where I go over in detail all the different profiles and what they offer, in particular the dials themselves. So take a look at that and you'll be right up to speed with how the profile is built and what it offers you. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.